It truly is a privilege and an honor for me to be among you. Dr. Helt, Mr. Schneider, Mr. and Mrs. Katz, Mrs. Schneider, thank you so much for inviting myself and Ray, who just spoke, to be here. This land, Israel, is very near and dear to my heart. I'm turning 40 in April, and I always had wished to be in the Holy Land before I turn 40. And thanks be to God, and thanks to you, it happened. As I said, I'm humbled to have the opportunity to talk to you about what the Christians in Iraq have been enduring for the last 1,400 years. I will talk to you about this cause, what it is and what it isn't. I'll start briefly talking about myself. As it was said before, I'm an Assyrian Christian Catholic from Iran. I was smuggled out of Iran in 1989 due to religious persecution. I was smuggled into Switzerland and then again into Germany, where we declared religious asylum. I was blessed enough to go to the United States in 1990. I founded the Iraqi Christian Relief Council in 2006 under the guidance of Cardinal Francis George, the Archbishop of Chicago. The purpose of this organization is to travel throughout the United States, now internationally, to raise awareness about the plight of the Iraqi Christians, who are also known as Chaldeans and Syriacs, and really talk about what has been happening, ask for prayers, and seek funds to support the refugees that come to the United States and also those that are holding the fort in the homeland. When we started traveling throughout the region, throughout the states, I cannot tell you how many Christians that we came across with did not know there were Christians in Iraq, let alone that they were being persecuted. They always said, we thought that the Assyrians died during the Old Testament, or they would say, we thought that there were Kurds, Sunnis, and Shiites lived in Iraq. And I'm certain that majority of you know those are not correct. The Assyrians, also known as Chaldeans and Syriacs, are without a doubt the indigenous people of the land. They have lived in their ancestral homeland, tracing their roots back to Sumerians and Akkadians, who settled in Mesopotamia approximately 4,000 years before Christ. They contributed to civilization through inception of the first library, creation of the first code of law, and discovering the practice of herbal medicine, among other discoveries. The Assyrians, just like their Jewish brethren, are the descendants of Shem, the son of Noah, famously known as Semitic people. The Assyrians are the first nation, we are the first nation who converted to Christianity through St. Thomas after he started his travels during the 1st century AD. Since the fall of Nineveh in 612 before Christ, the Assyrians have really lived under the mercy of their overlords in that region. Records show very little about what they would do to survive or how did they manage their day-to-day life. But as soon as they converted to Christianity, they became missionaries, and they traveled to India, to China, to the Philippines, to Japan. So if you travel to and you research in China, you will see tablets that have Aramaic inscription on them. Speaking of Aramaic, this is our alphabet, Aleph, Gamel, Bet. We say Elab, Bit, Gamel, Dalet, Vav, Zen, Chet. Sounds familiar? We have 22 letters in our alphabet. This is an image of the fall of Nineveh. This is an image of missionaries that were going to India and to China to evangelize. Rise of Islam, however, exposed the Assyrian community to repeated attacks, Arabization, and Islamization. According to the Assyrian International News Agency, INA.org, the Islamist extremists have attacked the Christian communities in that region starting the time of Islam until mid-1800s every 45 years. Starting 1800s till today, it's been every generation, every 11 and a half years, we've gone under some form of persecution. While many throughout the world have heard of the Armenians and Greek genocide, 3 out of 4 Assyrians were killed from 1914 through 1918. I don't know what it is in Aramaic, but we call that entire era Sepa, Seifo. How do you say sword in Aramaic? Safe. We call that era Sepa. My own family. Sword. My own family was affected directly with this. My great-grandfather, who was educated in America, had gone back to Iran to bring his family to America. Died in a camp in Ormia, in northwestern part of Iran. His wife was kidnapped by the Kurds. His 2 daughters were raped and then kidnapped. My grandmother married my grandfather, fled to Russia. So these images that I'm going to show you are, I will start showing graphic images, so I just want you to be aware. This is a drawing of Kurdish women burning Assyrian women to retrieve what they thought would be gold inside their bodies. They thought that Assyrian women had swallowed gold. This is an image from 1914 massacre. Many people during harsh, cold winters in the northern part of Iraq, Iran, southern Turkey, walked to Russia, to Armenia by foot. While we look back, the left picture shows how kids used to be massacred then, and the right picture is from 2010, which I will talk about further with you. Kids cried then and kids cry today. We lived in tents. The picture on the right is after the attack on Mosul in October 2008, when they started living in tents. And back then, European and American missionaries would bring aid, and today my organization does the same, along with other good organizations. So as you see, exactly what Ray was saying, this is a blueprint. It's been happening from the time of Islam with the same fashion. Bayoneting the kids, beheading clergy, burning girls, attacking churches. It is exactly the same. The method has not changed. I'd like to fast forward to 2003. I will categorize the attacks that started happening to our people in Iraq. At this time, I really would like you to open your hearts to this cause, and please be aware that the stories and images will be graphic. Starting June of 2004 to date, the churches throughout Iraq have been bombed over 80 times. Sometimes, simultaneously, 5 to 7 churches were bombed throughout the whole country. This is a systematic assault on our people. Most of these attacks happen on Fridays, right after the day of prayer. And sometimes the attacks continued until Sunday afternoon. So Christians would brace themselves during the weekend, our weekends. The systematic kidnapping and killing of clergy began in 2006. This is actually a church, an Armenian church. It's not only Assyrians who were attacked, other minorities, Armenians, Shabaks, Yazidis, Mandians, they all were attacked. These are images that I actually saw on Fox News. And the only reporting that was done about the simultaneous attacks, maybe 30-second coverage. It wasn't written about it as much. We couldn't find television or radio stations talking about it, and that's why Archbishop of Chicago encouraged us to start this organization to raise awareness. So I saw my people. I mean, can you imagine? I know your heart breaks and you feel helpless when you see a Jew being drenched in blood running. And I want you to put yourselves in my shoes, and that's how I felt that winter of 2006, July, when 2 churches were bombed on a Sunday. And I felt so helpless, and I said, these are my people. I'd never seen that before. And when I saw that, those images that I saw will last me a lifetime, and that's why I'm here talking about this. The clergy, the systematic attacks against clergy started in 2006. This man, Father Paulus Iskandar, was a priest at the Syriac Orthodox Church in Mosul. He was kidnapped because Pope Benedict had recently made a comment about Islam that Muslims didn't like. So they kidnapped him and sent a letter to his family and said, if you denounce what Pope Benedict had said, we will set him free. They did. They posted flyers everywhere around his church and around the neighborhood, thinking he would come home. His body was found the next day, disemboweled, his head severed, his legs and arms cut off. And they were placed strategically around the church. In the same year, in October of 2006, a 14-year-old teenager was crucified in Basra. Can you imagine that? The Chaldean Archbishop Louis Sacco of Kirkuk told ACN, American Christian Network, that he was aware of this report. Actually, he had heard another report that in Bakuba, another young man was crucified. And all because they would not denounce Christianity. This is Father Raghid Ghani. He had just returned from Rome from his studies in 2007 in Mosul. After a month of being in Iraq, he wrote a letter to his friend in Rome and said, "You will never see me again. I will be a martyr. Things are terrible in this country." He was attacked right after conducting Mass in an evening, and 3 of his deacons and he had come under fire in his car. And after attacking them by bullets, they booby-trapped his car because they did not want the police, in case they survived the attack, they did not want the police to retrieve the bodies right away. This is Archbishop Faradrahu. Father Raghid Ghani was his secretary. Archbishop Faradrahu was kidnapped for the 2nd time. And he sent a message to his parishioners and said, "Do not raise money. They have made a business of this, of kidnapping and holding people for ransom." He refused to be freed on a ransom. They found his body on March 13th, 2008, on the side of the road, killed by poison, by acid, through his nostrils. This is a truly heartbreaking story. This family, the mother of this family who tells me the story, lives in Illinois today, in America. The 2 women in the middle were working for Americans. And that's another reason why we came under attack. A lot of Assyrians and Armenians started working, showing their solidarity with Americans. And we came under attack because of our alliance with America. We came under attack because of our shared faith with America. And refugees who I meet today say, those people that had kidnapped them, I told them, "You share the same faith with Americans. You are their allies. You think your American cousins will save you? We will hand you over to them in body bags." So these 2 women were returning to go to a wedding. Their taxi cab came under fire. One was shot 10 times, one was shot 4 times. We Assyrians mourn 3 days after the burial, 7 days, 40 days, and 1 year. On the 40th day of memorial, their father passes away of a heart attack. And his wife believes that it was because of the heartbreak he endured. The 3rd daughter was kidnapped and beaten on the day of her father's funeral. She didn't die because of that attack. She was rushed to the hospital. The nurse killed her by injecting her. This family's story is absolutely tragic. This is an actual letter that was sent to the family targeting the younger daughter. And the younger daughter was kidnapped, but thanks be to God, she was released, and she is now in Illinois. But can you imagine, when we went to show our solidarity with this family for the first time, what can you tell somebody who's lost most of her family just because they're a Christian? What words of encouragement could I have offered? The atrocities continue. On May 2nd, 2010, 4 buses filled with Assyrian Christian kids going to school to take, I see some young faces here and students, they were going to take their final exam. Their buses came under attack. 2 died, 9 lost their eyes, 58 were badly injured. This is an image from inside the bus. Still, they haven't lost their faith. Now, this young lady is scarred for life, just because she's a Christian and she was going to school. October 31st, 2010, All Saints Day. Our Lady of Salvation Cathedral came under attack in Baghdad. 8 Islamist men, one of them as young as 14, who was from Yemen, stormed the church, killed 2 priests while injuring the 3rd. In an interview with Asia News, an eyewitness recalls in fear. At one point, one terrorist was wounded and kept saying to his leader, "I'm hurt and I'll detonate my explosive belt so I can become a martyr and go to heaven." The commander gave him the permission. They bade each other farewell, saying, "Okay, see you in heaven." Then he blew himself up. His companions began shouting, "You are unbelievers. You will go to hell while we are going to heaven. Allahu Akbar." The same eyewitness laments. Father Wasim, who at the time of attack was in the confessional, tried to talk to the terrorists to convince them to let the people go and just to take those two as hostage. He was shot right away. Father Tha'ir, the priest who celebrated Mass, died because he wanted to save the children. The last sentence Father Tha'ir recited in front of his mother, who was sitting in the front pews, was, "Jesus, into thy hands I commend my spirit." Father Tha'ir, representing the love of Christ, was dressed in a white and blue vestment, demonstrating peace and glory of Christianity, while the Islamist terrorists wore a bomb vest. This is the aftermath. What happens, and I'm sure many of you know, maybe news agencies come, they cover, or they may write, but what happens is when the lights go off, when the dust settles, the tragedy continues in the family lives. And these are images of the funeral. I'm going to show you, and I hope you will hear it clearly, about a 2-minute video of two sisters. Who is that young child that you saw? That was their nephew who passed away. This is their testimony. And it's in Arabic, so.
وجنسياتهم عربية فقط اللي كان يمي عراقي كان يحكي عراقي وأول ما دخلوا الناس اللي نايمة بالصفحات طبعا كلهم منبطحين نزلوا دق يعني طلقات عليهم قتلوا هواي عالم هواي ناس وأول شي الشماس قتلوا كنيستنا وثاني شي طلع القص عليهم أبونا وسيم انه دا يهدي الوضع وشي وراسلهم ضربوهم وقع من طوله بعدين وراهم القص ابونا ثار همين ضربوه همين وقع من طوله اني بالموقع اللي كنت بيه اني بس انا وميرنا اختي وعدي الشهيد وادم ابن الشهيد ومرته وبنته ومن عدا العالم اللي كانوا ويانا يعني اكيد عالم هو هي الكنيسه كانت بيها وماما راحت بغير مكان يعني هي ماما ما رضت تعوفنا بس يعني من الهوزة اللي صارت هم دخلوا صاروا بنص الكنيسة واحنا انفصلنا يعني كان لازم ننفصل لانه دخلوا بنص الكنيسة خلال ثواني ما نعرف شلون وصلوا لنا دخلوا لحد ما وصلوا علينا ضربوا يعني كل شيء ضربوا بالكنيسة حتى السبالد طقوها علينا الوقت كله يمنا صار لان نايمين احنا على صفحات السبالد بعدين قاموا يضربون طلقات هيك يعني عشوائي وشافوا الصليب يصيحوا لنا كفرة كفرة ويصيح الله أكبر يمي واقف ويمي كان يمرش لي حتى سلاحه يمرش لي كل هذا كنت أتوقع إنه أنا أروح اللي راح أموت أنا آخر وحدة كنت نايمة يعني بالقاع الحين قريب يمي صح قريب يم أخويا ويم ميرنا أختي ويم مرت أخويا قريب كلش هو علينا كان بس أنا أقرب وحدة كنت آخر وحدة بيهم بعدين لحد ما صارت القنابل اللي ذبونا إياها بس شنو يعني بس نحس الرجة جوانا انحفظنا يعني أمي مريم هي اللي حفظتنا ومن غير الشباب شافوا واحد أصلع شافوا أصلع ما أدري أحباك إيش شافوا ويصيحون الله أكبر أصلع هم ضربوه صار صوته بس الشباب كلهم قتلوهم ما بقوا شاب بالكنيسة بعدين المكان اللي ماما كانت بيه غرفة اللي هي مال قسام دخلوا وقاموا يضربون رمانات عليهم أنا قلت ماما ماتت يعني ما راح أشوفها بعد وقاعد يمي ما بقى جاي حاجة كفار انتوا تروحون للنار واحنا نروح للجنة.
I hope many of you were able to read the subtitles or understood the Arabic. Today, there are approximately 1 million Iraqi Christians who have become refugees in different countries. Those who have fled to Syria are once again refugees, returning back to a country, Iraq, who did not want them at one point, or who've lost their loved one there, or they've been kidnapped and the people have been kidnapped and have never heard from again. There are hundreds of crimes that really go unnoticed. How many of you in this room had heard of this attack? Just 2 people. So now what we experienced in Iraq, Baghdad south, and in Mosul, was religious cleansing. But in the north, we are faced in the hands of Kurds, who many think they are friends of the West, or friends of the Assyrians, ethnic cleansing. People who flee from Basra, from Baghdad to the Kurdish region, yes, they welcome them, but they give them a form to fill out that says, you are no longer an Assyrian Christian, you're a Kurdish Christian. Or if they don't sign the form, they're unable to have a good life, go to a good church, have a decent home to live in. For example, they have also recently been encroaching into our lands, the farms that are owned rightfully. We have deeds in our hands that belong to the Assyrian families. Under the title of tourism, they've penetrated, they've started digging in the farms or in the backyards of the Assyrian homes. What we have done is we have written, we are a humanitarian organization. We cannot get involved politically, but we have a very good Assyrian organization, American Mesopotamian organization, who works diligently in Washington, D.C. They send petitions out for people to sign, and we really try to impact the American policy to see the reality, the truth. We frequent Washington, we meet with lawmakers, and let me tell you something. One of the lawmakers last year in January told me, if you strap a bomb on you as an Assyrian in Iraq and you blow yourself up like Palestinians do, we'll stop paying attention to your cause. That was the answer. So what can you do after having painted this bleak picture? You might be asking, is it too late for these people? For us to help them? Because before 2003, there was about 1.4 million Assyrian Christians who lived there. Today, we have about 450,000 left. So is it too late? There are 2 schools of thoughts about that. One school that says, just bring them to the West. We'll take care of them here, and they'll be able to practice their religion freely. And the other school of thought says, no, that's and you really understand what I'm saying at this point. That's our ancestral homeland. That is where we've been for thousands of years. That is where we will retain our language. We don't want to be forced out. So they choose to stay, about 400,000 of them, and they hold a fort. So what can we do to help them? There are 3 things I'd like to talk about. First and foremost, in this forum, I believe wholeheartedly that Christians and Jews must have a better relationship. We need to become closer. We need to set aside theological differences we may have. And on a human level, on a Judeo-Christian level, we need to come closer and unite. Number 2, I believe in prayer. I completely, wholeheartedly believe in power of prayer. When I was being smuggled out of Iran, we kept on finding different smugglers. A few took the money, went, we never heard from them. A few tried to make things for us, endangering me more even, but they didn't care. They were getting paid very good money. I fasted, my mother and I fasted 15 days. I was 15 years old. 15 days from pretty much everything except basic water and bread. And our prayers were answered the following week. And I'm here standing in front of you as an American citizen. So I believe in power of prayer. I want you to pray for those people. This 3rd step would be to spread the word. As you know, as you see, only 2 or maybe 3 people knew about this. I ask you to talk to your friends and family members. The images that I showed you, they are on our website. Our flyer is right here on the table. You can contact us if you want to get involved. Spread the word about this. People really need to know what is happening, because this is not an assault only on Christianity. It's not an assault only on humanity. It's an assault on people like you and I, the Judeo-Christian nations. The 4th is, when I'm in America, I plead with the Americans to write to their state representatives. These state representatives, Republican, this is a bipartisan issue. So they pay attention when the constituents start threatening if the representative does not do something about a cause that they're passionate about. And I ask you here in Israel, and I ask those of you who have connections in Europe, We really, really need to raise this to the UN level. We've written letters to the Obama administration. We've not even heard a word back, not even a blanket letter that says, we heard you, we'll do something. When he was a senator, he wrote to Condoleezza Rice. When Clinton was running for the office and she was a senator, she wrote to Condoleezza Rice, and now they're silent. So I ask you to spread the word. We really need to put pressure on the two governments, Kurdish and Iraqi governments. If they don't hear from us, who will they hear from? I've been standing here before you speaking on behalf of those who have suffered so much. The crimes I mentioned, like I said, are an attack against Christianity and Judeo-Christianity and the way of life, our way of life. Today, Iraq has become just the black hole on the other side of the world, especially to Americans. I, along with other activists, are not working for a cause. This is not a cause. I don't want to say this is a cause or a plight. This is justice. We're seeking justice. We don't have militia in Iraq. We don't want grandiose treatment. We just want to live as any other citizen there. If we remain silent, this silence means these events I described here for you today are not dramatic enough, or they're not interesting enough for us for them to capture our attention. There's no sweeter, and you know this, there's no sweeter name than home. We have been living in exile for thousands of years. While in exile, we have been praying and seeking to form strong ties with nations such as yours, and for us to teach and make people understand that this is truly an injustice that has been imposed on us. Will you be the voice of those who are voiceless? Thank you.
We could take two short, brief questions. Yes.
Hi, Juliana. Miles LaRue from Louisiana. I just had a question. What kind of response in presenting this to Americans do you get from the Protestant community? Because it seems from the images you showed, it's a very Catholic-based support in America. You said you referenced the Archbishop? The Archbishop and things. So what kind of Protestant response do you get from churches?
It's been very quiet on both Catholics and Protestants. There have been Catholic radio has been very open to us. So we've been able to spread the word that way. We have been able to spread the word through only maybe 2 or 3 Catholic churches so far. Protestants, two Protestant churches, one in New Jersey, one in Vegas, invited us, in Nevada, to do this. I will tell you what they say. When we contact both Catholics and Protestants to talk about this, their answer is they just built a mosque in the community, and their team on their interfaith dialogue came and presented just last week or last month about how peaceful Islam is. And you will come, you'll confuse our parishioners, you'll make waves, and we don't need that. What you can do is you can submit an article, and we'll post it in our bulletin, and we'll pray. And they remain silent. Unfortunately, that's a battle. Another church that invited me to go and speak to them, they wanted me to rehearse this first because the priest wanted to, and he was a young priest in Illinois. And when I was finished, he said, so how do you really feel about Islam? I said, are you asking me as an individual, or are you asking me as the head of this organization? Because like Ray said, we really have to be careful with what we say. Every time we get up and talk, we don't know what ramification, what will happen to our people in Iraq. So we have to be careful. And he said, you are spreading poison, and you will not be presenting in my parish to poison the hearts and minds of my young parishioners. He said, I have studied Islam, and Islam is a peaceful religion. So he didn't let me. He said, if you want to come and speak, I will have a cleric debate you on every account you're speaking of. So organizations like Knights of Columbus have been supportive. Knights Templar, the Sovereign Military Order of Temple of Jerusalem, has been supportive. Camera, a Jewish organization, has been supportive, and your organization. So it's honestly an uphill battle, and we're all volunteers. The board members are all volunteers. I don't make money on this, but we all find it very important not to remain silent. You know, when World War I massacre happened that most people don't know about, our people also were killed. When 1933 massacre happened in the northern Iraq in a village called Duhok, with the permission of the newly elected Iraqi government, with the hands of Kurds, the entire village was wiped out. The neighboring villages were attacked. I said, when I read these accounts, before this, I used to say, how come Assyrians didn't do anything? How come Americans didn't do anything? Or Brits, and when this started happening, I said, by God, on Judgment Day, I will not stand there and say I could have done something, and I didn't. And that's why I'm here.
What kind of contact you have with the Catholic churches in Egypt and Israel and Jordan? What do they say?
We don't have much contact unless with lay people. With leadership, we don't have much contact. Yesterday, we had a Franciscan brother who came and said, yes, Augustus, sorry, came to our meeting yesterday and said, we don't know what to do. So they are just as lost as we are in the West. But if there are opportunities for us to have a dialogue with them, please, by all means, connect us to any. I presented to a synagogue on a Saturday, and it was such an honor for me to be there. And I spoke to them, and I cannot tell you how many people after the talk came up and said, Juliana, hang in there. We went through this. And they were giving me advice on how to keep our language and our identity, because I strongly believe there are four enemies that the Assyrians have. Ethnic cleansing is one, religious cleansing is one, assimilation is another. I married an American, a Klein, but he knows that if I have children with him, my kids will speak Aramaic. He knows that. But I'm an exception, because they come and they want to be American so fast, and they start speaking with a heavy accent English, which I'm a proponent of it. I assimilated quickly, but I didn't lose my identity. But a lot of people lose their identity when they come to the West. So that's the third enemy. The fourth enemy is lack of education. Our kids were 15, 16, 18 years old, 20 years old during the attacks starting 2003. They fled. They lived in refugee camps or in subsidized housings in Syria, in Jordan, and Turkey. They didn't go to school. Majority of them didn't go to school. I see them. They come to America. They're 20 years old. They're heartbroken. Who's going to go sit with a 17-year-old to go to high school? So they let it go. They start working. And their jobs that they acquire, if they're lucky to acquire, are maybe cleaning or valet, or they don't have that oomph that we used to have. The whole golden age of Islam, as you've heard so much being said around in the liberal media, the Christians of the Middle East gave that culture, the philosophy, the science, the medicine to those Muslim regions. And now they're taking the credit. But I see the ingenuity and that oomph, that drive that I had when I went to America 22 years ago. It's no longer. And that is how a nation dies, when the kids are not educated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure. Absolutely.